He invited the giants of the East, Russia and China, to stake their claims in the Venezuelan soil in exchange for a lifeline. The Shadow Allies. Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group were spotted in Caracas, acting as a shadowy Praetorian guard. Iranian tankers defied U.S. sanctions to bring fuel to a country that sat on the world's largest oil reserves, an irony that tasted like ash. In 2019, the world thought the end had come. Over 50 countries recognized a young politician, Juan Guaido, as the legitimate leader. For a moment, the air was thick with the scent of change. But Maduro sat in his palace, unmoved. He knew something the world didn't. He still owned the generals. Through a complex system of corruption and gold mining rackets, Maduro had turned the military into a mafia. The generals weren't defending a revolution, they were defending their bank accounts. One by one, the uprisings were crushed. The resistance faded into exile. Maduro had survived the storm, but the clouds were only getting darker. July 2024. The world's eyes were on Venezuela once again. The opposition had united under Corina Machado and Edmundo González. The polls were clear. The people wanted Maduro out by a landslide. On election night, the pulse of the nation stopped. The government-controlled electoral council announced a Maduro victory. The world gasped in disbelief. Evidence of massive fraud flooded the internet. Tally sheets showing the truth were smuggled out like contraband. This was the final crack in the dam. The 2024 election didn't just steal a vote, it stole hope. The protests that followed were met with Operation Knock Knock, the secret police dragging dissidents from their homes in the dead of night. But this time, the pressure didn't dissipate, it crystallized. The International Criminal Court moved closer. The U.S. upped the bounty on his head to $15 million. Maduro was a king in a bunker, ruling over a ghost kingdom. Little did he know, while he was celebrating his victory, the plans for January 3, 2026 were already being whispered in the corridors of the Pentagon. January 3, 2026. The night was unusually humid. Inside the walls of the Fuerte Tiuna military complex, Nicolas Maduro felt secure, surrounded by layers of elite guards and Russian-made anti-aircraft systems. He believed he was the master of survival. He was wrong. The breach. It began not with a bang, but with a blackout. At 03:12 a.m., the power grid of central Caracas went dark. Communication lines were severed. Cyber warfare units had paralyzed the Venezuelan military's nervous system. This wasn't a coup, it was a surgical extraction. While the world watched the new administration in Washington take a hardline stance, the red line had finally been crossed. Intelligence reports suggested Maduro was preparing to flee to a non-extradition country. The window was closing. The Special Ops teams, a coalition of elite units, moved with terrifying precision. They bypassed the outer rings of the military, who, left without orders and tired of years of hunger, offered little resistance. By the time the Presidential Guard realized the palace was breached, the heavy oak doors of the inner sanctum were being blown off their hinges. Legend says Maduro was found in his private study, a suitcase packed, a map of the Caribbean open on his desk. There were no grand speeches, no final stand, just the cold click of handcuffs. The son of Chavez was led out into the darkness, his face covered, as the helicopters vanished into the morning mist before the city even realized its king was gone. By dawn, the news hit the world like a tidal wave. In Miami, thousands took to the streets in celebration. In Caracas, the feeling was different, a mix of euphoria and terrifying uncertainty. For 13 years, Maduro had been the sun around which their misery orbited. Now the sun was gone, leaving a cold, dark vacuum. The power vacuum. As Maduro was flown to an undisclosed location in the United States to face charges of narco-terrorism and crimes against humanity, Venezuela stood at a crossroads. The military leaders scrambled for cover. The colectivos, the armed pro-government gangs, roamed the slums, undecided whether to fight or melt away. The recovery will not take days, it will take decades. The treasury is empty, the infrastructure is a skeleton, the oil fields are rusted monuments to mismanagement. But for the first time in a generation, the air in Venezuela doesn't smell like tear gas. It smells like the possibility of a beginning. History is a harsh judge. Nicolas Maduro will be remembered not as the hero of the poor he claimed to be, but as a cautionary tale for the ages. He is the man who proved that you can have all the oil in the world, all the weapons of a state, and all the loyalty of generals, and still lose the heart of your people. His legacy is written in the footsteps of the 7 million refugees who walked across continents to escape his revolution. It is written in the empty plates of the children in Petare. It is written in the silence of the journalists he silenced. The bus driver has reached the end of the line. The route was long, the detours were bloody, and the destination was inevitable. As Venezuela begins the slow, painful process of healing, the world watches, reminded once again that no wall is high enough to keep out the tide of history.